The moment my life actually ended wasn't when the FBI kicked down my front door, and it wasn't when the handcuffs clicked around my husband's wrists while the neighbors watched from behind their curtains. No, the real end happened 4 months earlier, over a plate of burnt blueberry pancakes. But to understand why I didn't scream when the feds raided my house, to understand why I stood there in my silk robe, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the man I'd loved for a decade get shoved into a squad car with a sense of grim satisfaction, you have to understand the Tuesday morning that started it all. It was raining. That miserable gray Boston drizzle that makes you want to crawl back under the duvet and pretend the world doesn't exist. But I was up at 6 a.m. because I'm Jordan, and Jordan fixes things. That was my job. I was a crisis management consultant for tech CEOs who couldn't keep their mouths shut on Twitter and politicians who got caught with interns. I spun narratives. I made disasters disappear. I was standing at the stove, wrestling with a spatula that had seen better days, trying to flip a pancake that was sticking to the pan like it was holding on for dear life. The kitchen smelled like scorching butter and high-end coffee beans, Adrian's specific blend, Sumatra Mandeling, or some nonsense that cost $30 a bag. Adrian came down first, looking like he'd just stepped out of a catalog for reformed bad boys. He was 40, but he had that infuriatingly good genetics thing going on. Silver just starting to touch his temples, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He kissed the top of my head, grabbed a travel mug, and did that little two-step dance he always did to avoid the squeaky floorboard near the fridge. "You're a saint, Jay," he mumbled, grabbing a piece of bacon I'd actually managed not to char. "I'm going to be late tonight. The zoning board meeting for the Seaport project is going to run long." "Don't wait up." "Again?" I asked, scraping the mangled pancake onto a plate. "That's 3 times this week, Adrian. The kids miss you." "I know, babe. I know. It's just this deal. Once we break ground, I promise we're going to Cabo. Just the 4 of us." He flashed that smile, the one that had charmed investors out of millions and me out of my skepticism 10 years ago. "Gotta pay for those private schools somehow, right?" He slapped my ass playfully, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out the door. I watched his Audi pull out of the driveway, the taillights blurring in the rain. I felt a pang of guilt for nagging him. He was working hard. He was building an empire for us. I was an idiot. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. 10 minutes later, the chaos descended. Micah, 7 years old and currently obsessed with dinosaurs, and Evie, 5 and obsessed with anything that sparkled, came thundering down the stairs. "Mom! Evie stole my T-Rex!" Micah shouted, sliding into his chair at the kitchen island. "Did not! He was eating my fairy princess!" Evie shrieked, climbing into her booster seat. "Okay, ceasefire," I said, putting the plates down. "Eat! We have to leave in 20 minutes or you're walking to school in the rain." I turned back to the counter to wipe up a splash of milk, my back to them. The kitchen was filled with the sounds of chewing and the clink-clink of spoons against ceramic. It was the soundtrack of my life. Mundane. Safe. "Mom?" Micah asked. His voice was casual, muffled by a mouthful of syrup and batter. "Yeah, bud." I rinsed the sponge, scrubbing at a stubborn spot of dried egg. "Why does Dad kiss the sparkly lady at the river?" I froze. My hand stopped mid-scrub. The water was running, hot against my knuckles, but the rest of my body went ice cold. I stared at the white subway tiles of the backsplash, trying to process the sentence. Maybe I misheard. Maybe he said kick or miss. I turned off the faucet. The silence in the kitchen was sudden and heavy, broken only by Evie humming the theme song to Bluey. "What did you say, Micah?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. I turned around. He was digging a blueberry out of his pancake, completely uninterested in the grenade he'd just tossed into the room. "At the river," he said, looking up at me with big, innocent brown eyes. Adrian's eyes. "On Saturdays. Why does he kiss her?" What lady?" I wiped my hands on a dish towel. My heart was starting to hammer a weird, erratic rhythm against my ribs. Daddy takes you guys to the gym daycare on Saturdays while he works out. Evie piped up, swinging her legs. No, we go to the big park, the one with the ducks. And the lady brings us the special juice boxes, the ones with the squishy tops. Yeah, Micah added, abandoning the blueberry. The sparkly lady. She has earrings like disco balls. Dad kisses her hello and goodbye, like on the mouth, Mom. It's gross. I gripped the edge of the granite counter. The room tilted slightly to the left. On the mouth. Is it a friend of Daddy's from work? I asked. I felt like I was navigating a press conference where the client had just confessed to murder, but I hadn't read the briefing. I don't know, Micah shrugged. She brings the other girl, though. The one that looks like me. The one that looks like you? The words felt like they were coming from someone else. I walked over to the island, leaning in close, ignoring the smell of syrup that usually made me smile. Yeah, Evie said, her mouth full. Lila. She's nice. She can do a cartwheel. A real one, not like Micah's fake ones. Shut up, Evie. Micah kicked his sister under the table. Hey, I snapped, harsher than I intended. They both jumped. I took a deep breath, smoothing the hair back from my forehead. Sorry, guys. Micah, tell me about Lila. Micah looked wary now, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Kids are like dogs. They can smell fear. She's just a kid, Mom. She plays on the swings with us. Dad pushes her. He calls her Lila Bug. The air left my lungs. Lila Bug. That was what Adrian used to call Evie when she was a baby. He stopped when she turned 3 because he said she was getting too big for baby names. And does Lila have a mommy? I asked, my voice trembling. Duh, Micah rolled his eyes. The sparkly lady, that's her mom. Dad talks to sparkly lady while we play. They sit on the bench and drink coffee, the fancy kind with the foam. Does he hold the sparkly lady's hand? I hated myself for asking. I was interrogating my first grader. This was a new low. Sometimes, Evie said, nodding solemnly, and sometimes she fixes his collar. You know, like you do before he goes to big meetings. I closed my eyes. I could see it. I could see Adrian standing by the Charles River on a crisp Saturday morning, letting another woman adjust his collar while my children, our children, played on the swings a few feet away. How long? I whispered, opening my eyes. How long have you been going to the park with them? Micah scrunched up his face, thinking hard. Since before Halloween. Yeah, 'cause Lila had a pumpkin bucket and she gave me her Snickers. Halloween was 4 months ago. 4 months of Saturdays. 4 months of, I'm gonna hit the gym for a few hours, babe, get my cardio in. 4 months of me feeling grateful that he was taking the kids so I could catch up on emails. Okay, I said. My voice sounded robotic. Okay, hey, look at the time. We gotta go. I moved on autopilot. I packed their lunches. I signed Evie's permission slip for the zoo. I tied Micah's shoes. I drove them to school, listening to them chatter about Minecraft and playground politics, while my brain was screaming. When I dropped them off, I didn't go home. I pulled into a parking lot behind a CVS, turned off the car, and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. The professional part of my brain, the part that fixed things, was waking up. I needed data. Emotion was a liability. Data was leverage. That was rule number 1 of crisis management. I drove back to the house, the empty silence of the car suffocating me. When I got inside, the smell of the burnt pancakes was still hanging in the air. I scraped them into the trash with a violence that startled me, then marched upstairs to Adrian's home office. He kept the door locked, but I knew where the key was, taped under the bottom drawer of the antique filing cabinet in the hallway. He thought he was so clever. I retrieved it, unlocked the door, and went straight to the desktop. Password, Cabo 2014, our honeymoon. He hadn't changed it in a decade. I logged into our joint accounts first. Nothing unusual. Mortgage, utilities, grocery bills, the exorbitant tuition for the kids' private school. But then I went into the rainy day savings account, the one we swore never to touch unless it was an emergency. It was empty. I stared at the screen, blinking. 0.00. There had been $80,000 in there 6 months ago. I pulled up the transaction history, a series of transfers, all to the same entity. Titan Holdings, LLC, $5,000 in September, $10,000 in October, $20,000 in November, $2,500 every single week since then. My mind started racing. Titan Holdings. It sounded corporate, vague. I opened a new tab and searched the Massachusetts Business Registry. Nothing. I tried Delaware. Nothing. My stomach unclenched, just a fraction. This didn't look like an affair. Affairs cost money. Dinners, hotels, jewelry. But they didn't typically involve structured, massive wire transfers to shell companies. This looked like debt. "Oh my God," I whispered, leaning back in Adrian's leather chair. "You idiot!" It made sense. The late nights, the stress, the way he'd been snapping at me about the credit card bills. Adrian was a developer. The market was volatile. Had he leveraged himself too far? Was Titan Holdings a loan shark or a bookie? I felt a rush of something pathetic, relief. If it was gambling, I could fix it. If it was blackmail, I could fix it. If he was in trouble with bad people, I could hire lawyers and private security. Money problems were solvable. Money problems didn't mean he didn't love me. Money problems didn't mean he was kissing someone else by the river. "Micah must have misunderstood," I said aloud, the sound of my own voice reassuring me. "A kiss on the cheek, a friend, a lender he's trying to sweet-talk." The Lila bug thing still stung, but maybe she was the lender's kid? Maybe he was babysitting to gain favor? It was a stretch, a desperate, elastic stretch, but my brain latched onto it. I spent the next 3 hours hunting down Titan Holdings. I traced the routing number to a small community bank in Cambridge. The account was linked to a P.O. box in Porter Square. It felt gritty, sordid, but it didn't feel romantic. I closed the laptop at 2 p.m. I had a plan. I wouldn't confront him yet. I needed to see it. I needed to know exactly who Titan was and how deep of a hole Adrian had dug for us. Saturday was 4 days away. I could wait. I had to wait. Saturday morning arrived with a brightness that felt mocking. The sun was blazing, the birds were chirping. It was a perfect spring day in Boston. I woke up before the alarm, my body humming with adrenaline. I lay there, feigning sleep, watching Adrian through my eyelashes. He went through his routine. He stretched, downward dog, cobra, groaning theatrically about his hamstrings. Then he went into the bathroom. I heard the shower run. When he came out, the room filled with the scent of sandalwood and citrus. Creed Aventus. My eyes snapped open. He only wore that cologne for weddings and high-stakes investor meetings, not for the gym. Definitely not for a sweaty session on the elliptical. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty," he said, buttoning a Henley that fit him a little too perfectly. "I'm going to take the monsters off your hands, give you a break. Maybe you can tackle that inbox you were complaining about?" "You're the best," I said, my voice thick with sleep and lies. "Have fun. Don't let them eat too much sugar." "Never," he promised, leaning down to kiss my forehead. His lips were dry. He smelled expensive. I waited until I heard the garage door rumble open and the Audi back out. I counted to 60. Then I threw off the covers and sprinted to the closet. I didn't want to look like Jordan the crisis manager. I needed to look invisible. I dug into the back of the closet, pulling out a bag of clothes I'd meant to donate to Goodwill 3 years ago. I found a faded gray zip-up hoodie from a tech startup that had gone bust in 2018. Baggy, shapeless, perfect. I pulled on a pair of black leggings and grabbed a Red Sox cap, the one with the frayed brim that Adrian used for painting the deck. I shoved my hair up into the cap, pulling it low. I grabbed a pair of oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses I'd bought at a gas station once. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like me. I looked like every other exhausted, over-caffeinated mom in Boston. I looked like a ghost. "Showtime," I whispered to my reflection. I grabbed the keys to my old Volvo, the dog car we kept for hauling mulch and muddy golden retrievers, because Adrian would recognize my sleek black SUV from a mile away. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the keys twice before I even got out the door. The drive to the Riverside Park took 20 minutes. I drove in the slow lane, hiding behind a delivery truck, paranoid that Adrian might see me in his rearview mirror even though he was miles ahead. The park was packed. It was prime real estate. A sprawling green ribbon along the Charles River, filled with joggers, strollers, and the kind of people who bought $8 lattes. I parked the Volvo 3 blocks away on a side street, sandwiched between a dumpster and a fire hydrant. I pulled the cap down tighter, adjusted my sunglasses, and started walking. My heart was beating in my throat, a frantic, bird-like fluttering. I kept telling myself the narrative I'd built. He's meeting a loan shark. He's meeting a blackmailer. I am here to save him. I entered the park from the north side, near the boathouse. I scanned the crowd. It was a sea of Patagonia vests and Lululemon leggings. Then I saw them. They were near the big oak tree close to the playground entrance. Adrian was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed, laughing. Micah was hanging upside down from the monkey bars. Evie was chasing a squirrel, and standing next to Adrian, close, too close, was a woman. She wasn't a loan shark. She wasn't a bookie in a trench coat. She was stunning, tall, with dark hair that fell in loose, glossy waves down her back. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and jeans that probably cost more than my first car. She looked soft, elegant, and she was holding a coffee cup in one hand while her other hand rested casually, comfortably on Adrian's forearm. I ducked behind a recycling bin, my breath catching in a sob I barely stifled. The debt theory evaporated instantly. This wasn't business. This was intimacy. I watched as she said something, throwing her head back to laugh. Adrian watched her with a look I hadn't seen on his face in years, pure, unadulterated adoration. Then a little girl ran up to them. She was wearing a pink puffer vest and sparkly boots. She couldn't have been more than 6. She tugged on Adrian's jeans. Adrian didn't look annoyed. He didn't brush her off. He bent down, scooped her up, and swung her around in a wide arc. My stomach dropped. He had a slip disc. He complained about it every time I asked him to carry the laundry basket. My back, Jay, be careful. But here he was, swinging this child like she weighed nothing, like pain didn't exist in this alternate universe he'd built. I needed proof. I needed to see her face. I crept closer, using a cluster of bushes as cover. I pulled out my phone, the iPhone 15 Pro with the ridiculous zoom lens I'd bought for taking pictures of the kids at soccer. I steadied my hand against the rough bark of an elm tree and zoomed in. Click, click, click. I got Adrian's profile. I got the woman's hand on his arm. I got Evie running up to the woman and showing her a leaf. The woman crouched down and admired the leaf with an enthusiasm that made my blood boil. Then, the little girl turned around. She looked toward the camera, almost like she sensed me watching. I gasped, stumbling back a step. Through the digital viewfinder, the face staring back at me was impossible. She had dark, curly hair, just like Micah. She had the same slightly upturned nose, Adrian's nose. She had a small, distinctive dimple on her left cheek. Micah had that dimple. Evie didn't. I didn't. Adrian didn't. It was a recessive trait from Adrian's grandmother. We used to joke about it, how the Hartley dimple skipped a generation until Micah. But this girl had it. She looked exactly like Micah did at that age. If you put a wig on Micah, it would be this child. The resemblance wasn't just passing, it was biological. It was undeniable. It was screaming DNA from every pixel on my screen. Lila, I whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. She wasn't just a friend's kid. She wasn't a stepchild from a previous life. She was his, and she was 6. I did the math instantly, staring at the screen while the world spun around me. Micah was 7, Evie was 5, Lila was right in the middle. While I was pregnant with Evie? No, before. The shutter sound of my phone taking bursts of photos, chick, 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 sounded like gunshots in my ears. I snapped until my thumb cramped. I documented every smile, every touch, every shared glance between my husband, my children, and this shadow family. I couldn't breathe. The air in the park felt too thin, too sweet. I turned and ran. I didn't care if they saw me. I just needed to get away. I sprinted back to the car, my hoodie flapping, tears streaming down my face behind the oversized sunglasses. I threw myself into the driver's seat of the Volvo and locked the doors, gasping for air like a drowning woman. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove away from the river, away from the picture-perfect scene that had just shattered my reality. I ended up in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven 5 miles away. I sat there for 20 minutes, the engine idling. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't unbuckle my seatbelt. I needed to do something. I needed a prop. I stumbled out of the car and went into the store. The fluorescent lights were blinding. I grabbed a pack of gum, spearmint, I hate spearmint, and threw a $5 bill on the counter. "Keep the change," I mumbled to the clerk, who looked at me like I was on drugs. I walked back to the car and crushed the receipt in my fist until it was a tiny, hard ball of paper. Titan Holdings. The realization hit me so hard I actually retched, dry heaving onto the asphalt next to my car door. It wasn't a loan shark. It wasn't gambling. $2,500 a week. That's $10,000 a month. That's a mortgage, a big one. He wasn't paying off a debt. He was paying for a life. He was buying that woman, Veronica? Was that her name? Or was I making that up? He was buying her a house. He was paying for Lila's sparkly boots. He was funding a parallel existence while I was clipping coupons for organic milk. I looked at the crumpled receipt in my hand. I had thought I could fix a financial crisis. I had thought I could write a check and make the bad men go away, but I couldn't write a check to fix this. I went home. The house was empty, quiet. It felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I went straight to my office, my real office, the one with the 3 monitors and the high-speed connection I used for crisis recon. I cracked my knuckles. It was time to go to work. I started with the photo of the woman. I cropped her face from one of the pictures I'd taken at the park. I ran it through a reverse image search engine. Pimmy's, the one that scares people because it's too good. It took 30 seconds. Veronica Miller, landscape architect, Cambridge, MA. I pulled up her website. Miller and Moss Landscape Design. Elegant. Tasteful. There she was in her bio photo, looking professional in a blazer, holding a roll of blueprints. I found her Instagram. It was public. Mistake number 1, Veronica. I scrolled back. Photos of gardens. Photos of sunsets, photos of a baby. June 14, 2018, a photo of a newborn's feet. Caption, "Welcome to the world, my little Lila. You are my greatest landscape." June 2018. I froze. I pulled up my own digital calendar, scrolling back frantically. In June 2018, I was 4 months pregnant with Evie. I was huge. I was miserable. I had hyperemesis gravidarum, morning sickness so bad I was hospitalized twice for dehydration. Adrian had been absent. He'd said he was traveling for the big merger in Chicago. He was gone for weeks at a time. He wasn't in Chicago. He was with her. He was welcoming his other daughter into the world while I was vomiting into a bucket in our master bathroom. I kept scrolling through Veronica's feed. September 2017, a photo of her at a construction site. She's wearing baggy overalls, but there's a visible bump. September 2017, I opened a new tab. I logged into my medical portal for Mass General. I scrolled back to my IVF treatments. We had struggled to conceive Evie. We did 3 rounds of IVF in 2017. It was brutal. The injections, the hormones, the crushing disappointment when the first round failed. August 2017. Cycle 2, egg retrieval. I stared at the dates. Veronica got pregnant exactly around the time I was having my eggs retrieved. A cold, creeping horror started to crawl up my spine. It wasn't jealousy anymore. It was something darker, something confused. Adrian had been donating his sample for our IVF. He was stressed about it. He complained about the process. But how did he get Veronica pregnant at the exact same time? Was he just that fertile? Was he sleeping with her in the clinic parking lot? I looked closer at the photos of Lila on Instagram. The dimple, the nose, and something else, the eyes. Lila had heterochromia. One eye was slightly lighter than the other, a fleck of hazel in the blue. My father had that. I leaned closer to the screen, my nose almost touching the pixels. My father had that specific weird eye color quirk. I didn't have it, but I carried the gene. Micah didn't have it, Evie didn't have it, but Lila did. I felt like I was floating above my body. I logged back into the IVF clinic's portal, Fertility Solutions of Boston. I hadn't looked at this login in 5 years. I went to the Documents tab, consent forms, billing statements, cryopreservation records. I opened the log for August 24th, 2017, the day of my retrieval. They had harvested 12 eggs. We had fertilized 8. We implanted 2. We froze 4. Wait. I looked at the embryo disposition form dated September 1st, 2017. Status: 2 embryos transferred to patient, Jordan Hartley. Status: 4 embryos cryopreserved. I scrolled down. October 15, 2017. A document titled Consent for Compassionate Donation of Genetic Material. I clicked it. The PDF opened slowly, the loading wheel spinning like a taunt. It was a form authorizing the release of 2 frozen embryos to a designated recipient. Recipient name, redacted for privacy. At the bottom of the page, there were 2 signatures, Adrian Hartley. His signature was bold, confident, exactly like it looked on our tax returns. And next to it, Jordan Hartley. I stared at the signature. It was loopy. It was slanted to the right. My signature is sharp, jagged. I write like a doctor. This wasn't my signature. It wasn't even a good forgery. It looked like someone trying to write Jordan in a hurry. I looked at the date again, October 15, 2017. On October 15, 2017, I was in the hospital. I had been admitted for severe dehydration from the pregnancy sickness. I was hooked up to an IV. I wasn't signing forms at a fertility clinic. I couldn't feel my fingers. Adrian hadn't just cheated on me. He hadn't just had a baby with another woman. He had stolen my embryos. He had taken the children that we made, the genetic material that I had bled and cried and suffered to produce, and he had given them to her. Lila wasn't just his daughter. She was mine. Monday morning felt less like the start of a week and more like the beginning of a siege. I'd spent the weekend in a fugue state, functioning only enough to feed Micah and Evie and keep them alive, while my mind obsessively replayed the image of that forged signature. Jordan Hartley, a signature that wasn't mine, signing away a piece of my soul. I dropped the kids off at school. Micah forgot his lunchbox, and I didn't even care. Just handed him a $20 bill and told him to buy the cafeteria pizza, and drove straight to downtown Boston. Renee Sterling's office was on the 42nd floor of the Prudential Center. Renee was the kind of lawyer who didn't advertise on billboards. She was the kind of lawyer you heard about in hushed tones at country clubs when someone's husband got caught with a nanny or a pile of offshore accounts. She was terrifying. I walked in carrying a 3-inch binder I'd spent Sunday night compiling. I hadn't slept. My eyes felt like they were filled with sand, and I was running on 4 shots of espresso and pure distilled rage. Jordan, Renee said, standing up from behind a desk that looked like it was carved from a single piece of mahogany. She was wearing a cream suit that probably cost more than my car. You look like hell. Sit down. I found something, I said, bypassing the pleasantries. I dropped the binder onto her desk with a heavy thud. I thought it was just an affair, Renee. I thought he was just screwing a landscape architect in Cambridge. But it's worse. Renee put on her reading glasses, tortoiseshell, sharp angles, and opened the binder. I watched her face. Renee had seen everything. She'd handled divorces for senators and tech billionaires. She was unshakable. But when she got to tab 4, the medical records and the forged consent form, her eyebrows twitched. Just once. A microscopic crack in the armor. "Explain this," she said, tapping the paper with a manicured nail. "I didn't sign that," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. October 15, 2017. I was in the hospital for dehydration. I was hooked up to an IV bag. I couldn't even hold a pen, let alone sign a consent form for embryo donation. Renee looked up at me, taking off her glasses. Her eyes were dark and serious. "You're telling me he forged your signature to donate your genetic material to his mistress?" "Yes, and the child, Lila. She has my father's eyes, Renee. She has the Hartley dimple. She's mine, biologically. That's my daughter he's playing house with." Renee leaned back in her chair, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a shark that just smelled blood in the water. "Jordan," she said softly, "this isn't a divorce case anymore." "What is it?" "This is a federal RICO case wrapped in a medical malpractice suit, wrapped in identity theft," she said, counting off on her fingers. "Reproductive coercion is a felony in some contexts. But fraud? Forging medical documents? Trafficking in human tissue, effectively. If he paid the clinic staff to look the other way, which he almost certainly did, because no notary stamps a document with a mismatched signature unless they've been bribed, we are talking about prison time." I felt a cold shiver go through me. "Prison?" "Federal," she confirmed. "White-collar prison, maybe, but prison nonetheless. He stole your eggs, Jordan. He stole your child." She hit a button on her intercom. "Cindy, get me Patricia from Forensic Accounting and tell her to clear her schedule for the next 48 hours. We're going to war." Patricia arrived 20 minutes later carrying a laptop and a bag of sour gummy worms. She looked like a librarian who moonlighted as a hacker. She didn't say hello. She just plugged her laptop into the conference room screen and cracked her knuckles. "Renee says we're hunting," Patricia said, opening a spreadsheet that looked like the Matrix code. "Give me the target." "Titan Holdings, LLC, I said, "and Adrian Hartley. But he's smart, Patricia. He hides things well." Patricia snorted, ripping open the gummy worms. "Men like Adrian aren't smart, honey. They're arrogant. There's a difference. Arrogant men think nobody is looking. Smart men know someone always is." We spent the next 6 hours in that conference room. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows over the Boston skyline. But we didn't move. Patricia worked her magic. She accessed databases I didn't even know existed. She cross-referenced the Titan payments with public records, tax filings, and Adrian's known business associates. Around 2:15 p.m., she whistled low and long. "Well," Patricia said, popping a green worm into her mouth, "here's the kicker. Titan Holdings isn't just paying for a condo in Cambridge. It's a funnel." "A funnel for what?" I asked, leaning over her shoulder. "Adrian's current development project, the Seaport Tower. The one he says is his legacy." Patricia pointed to a column of red numbers. "He's been inflating the contractor invoices by 15%. The extra cash isn't going to the steel suppliers. It's being diverted to Titan Holdings." "He's embezzling?" I asked, stunned. Adrian was greedy, sure, but he was always careful about the law. Or so I thought. "Big time," Patricia nodded. "He's stealing from his investors, and not just a little. We're talking... let me see." She typed furiously for a moment. "Holy cow, $4.2 million over the last 6 years." My jaw dropped. $4 million? "It costs a lot to maintain 2 families in Boston," Renee noted dryly from the head of the table. "Private schools, mortgages, bribes to fertility clinic staff. It adds up." Patricia spun the laptop around. He's moving the money through Titan, paying the mistress's mortgage, paying for, get this, consulting fees to a V. Miller design. That's your girl, right? Veronica? Yes, I whispered. He's paying her a salary, Patricia said. $8,000 a month on top of the mortgage. Tax-free, I bet, because he's writing it off as a business expense for the development project. Renee stood up, smoothing her skirt. That's wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and embezzlement. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming. Jordan, we have him. We don't just have him for custody. We have him by the throat. We can send him away for a decade. I stared at the numbers on the screen. The $4.2 million, the stolen embryos, the lies upon lies. Do it, I said. Burn him down. I needed to close the loop. I had the legal weapon, but I needed the emotional confirmation. I needed to talk to Veronica. Renee advised against it. Never talk to the opposition directly, but I didn't care. I needed to know if she knew. Did she know she was raising my child? Did she know she was spending stolen money? I drove to Cambridge on Tuesday morning. I parked down the street from the address I'd found for Miller and Moss Landscape Design. It was a cute little storefront with window boxes full of tulips. I waited until I saw her unlock the door. She looked tired. She was wearing a baggy sweater and holding a coffee cup with both hands like it was a lifeline. I walked in. A bell jingled above the door. Be right with you, she called from the back, her voice cheerful. I'm not here for landscaping, Veronica, I said. She froze. She turned around slowly. When she saw me, her face drained of color. She knew who I was. Of course she did. She probably stalked my Instagram just like I stalked hers. Jordan, she breathed. She didn't look malicious. She looked terrified. We need to talk, I said, flipping the sign on the door to closed and locking it. Please, she stammered, backing up against a drafting table. Please don't. I didn't want any trouble. Adrian said you knew. He said you were okay with it. I stopped dead in the middle of the room. Excuse me? He said... Her hands were shaking so hard coffee was sloshing over the rim of her cup. He said you guys had an arrangement, that you were married on paper for the business, but you lived separate lives. He showed me the contract. What contract? Veronica scrambled to a filing cabinet. She pulled out a manila folder, her fingers fumbling with the tab. She pulled out a document and handed it to me. Domestic Partnership and Open Marriage Agreement. It was dated June 2016. It outlined a complex arrangement where Adrian and I agreed to seek emotional and physical fulfillment outside the marriage while maintaining the corporate image of the family. It was signed by Adrian, and it was signed by Jordan Hartley, the same loopy, slanted forgery from the fertility clinic. He told me you didn't want any more kids, Veronica said, tears spilling over. He said you froze your eggs but decided against using them, and you signed them over to us because you wanted him to be happy. He said it was your gift to us. He called it the compassionate donation. I stared at the paper. It was insane. It was a masterpiece of gaslighting. He had built an entire legal reality to keep her compliant. Veronica, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, look at the signature. She looked. Now look at this, I said, pulling my driver's license out of my wallet and slamming it onto the drafting table. She looked at my real signature. Sharp, jagged, nothing like the forgery. She looked back at the contract, then at me. I didn't sign that, I said. I didn't sign the embryo donation. I didn't know you existed until 3 days ago. I didn't know Lila existed until I saw her in the park. Veronica let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream, but something worse, a gasp of pure, suffocating realization. She dropped the folder. He lied to you too, I said. He told you I was the cold, career-obsessed wife who didn't want him, and he told me nothing. He just stole my DNA and my money and played us both. Veronica sank to the floor, right there in the middle of her beautiful office. She put her head in her hands and sobbed. He's been lying to me for 6 years, she choked out. I thought we were a modern family. I thought you approved." I looked down at her. I should have hated her. She was the woman sleeping with my husband, but seeing her there, broken by the same man who broke me, I just felt a profound, exhausting sadness. "Get up, Veronica," I said. "We have work to do." Wednesday night was date night. Usually that meant takeout sushi and Netflix while checking our phones, but tonight I cooked. I made rack of lamb with a pistachio crust, his absolute favorite, the meal I made the night he proposed. I roasted asparagus. I opened a bottle of 2005 Bordeaux that cost more than my first apartment's rent. I set the table with the good china. I lit candles. When Adrian came home, he looked surprised, then wary, then smug. The trifecta of a guilty man who thinks he's getting away with it. "Wow," he said, loosening his tie. "What's the occasion? Did you land the TechCorp account?" "Something better," I said, smiling. It was a terrifying smile, tight and brittle. "I just realized we haven't celebrated us in a while. I wanted to show you how much I appreciate everything you do." He relaxed. He actually bought it. He sat down, poured himself a massive glass of wine, and sighed contentedly. "You're amazing, Jay. Really? I know I've been distant lately. Work is just... it's a bear." "I bet," I said, serving him a chop. "How is the Seaport project? Any issues with the financing?" He didn't even flinch. "Smooth sailing. Investors are happy. We're ahead of schedule." "That's great," I said. "I was actually looking at our finances today, thinking about the future." He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh? What brought that up?" "Just thinking about the kids," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "Micah is getting so big, and Evie, she looks more like you every day. It's funny how genetics work, isn't it?" "Yeah," he chuckled nervously. "Strong genes." "I was thinking we should take that trip to Cabo," I continued. "Use the rainy day fund. I checked the account. It's empty, Adrian." The silence in the room was sudden and absolute. The only sound was the refrigerator humming. "What?" he choked. "The $80,000, I said, cutting into my lamb with surgical precision. "It's gone, transferred to Titan Holdings. I assume that's a new investment vehicle you forgot to tell me about." He went pale. Yes. It's a bridge loan. For the project. High interest return. I was going to surprise you with the dividends next month." "A surprise?" I nodded. "Like a puppy? Or another child?" He dropped his fork. It clattered against the fine china, a harsh, jarring noise. "What did you say?" he whispered. "I said..." I leaned forward, the candlelight dancing in my eyes. "Did you buy the investment for me? Or did you buy it for Lila?" "Who told you that name?" Adrian stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward. "Did Micah say something? Kids make things up, Jordan. You know that." "Sit down, Adrian," I said, my voice deadly calm. "I'm not sitting down. You're talking crazy. Who is Lila?" I reached under the table and pulled out my laptop. I opened it and hit the spacebar. The slideshow began. Photo 1, Adrian kissing Veronica by the river. Photo 2, Adrian swinging Lila. Photo 3, a close-up of Lila's face next to Micah's face. Photo 4, the deed to the condo in Cambridge listing Titan Holdings as the payer. Photo 5, the forged, compassionate donation form. Adrian stared at the screen. He looked like he was having a stroke. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "It's not what it looks like," he finally managed, the universal slogan of the guilty. "It looks like you stole $4.2 million from your investors," I said. "It looks like you forged my signature to steal my eggs. It looks like you have a 6-year-old daughter named Lila who thinks I donated her into existence. Jordan, listen." He moved toward me, hands up, pleading. "I can explain. Veronica, she was a mistake, a one-night thing. Then she got pregnant and I panicked. I tried to fix it." "A one-night thing?" I laughed. a harsh, barking sound. You signed the IVF forms in 2017, Adrian. You planned this. You were sleeping with her while I was in the hospital. I did it for us, he shouted, his face twisting into something ugly. You were so miserable. You were always sick. I needed an outlet. And then she wanted a baby, and we had the extra embryos, and I thought, why waste them? It's just biology, Jordan. It's just cells. She's not cells, I screamed, slamming my hand on the table. She is my daughter. She has my eyes, and you gave her away like she was a piece of old furniture. I protected you, he yelled back. I kept it separate. I gave you the perfect life. You have the house, the cars, the status. Why do you care if I have something on the side? It didn't hurt you. It didn't hurt me. I picked up my wine glass. You stole my money. You stole my DNA. You stole 6 years of my life. I threw the wine. Red liquid splashed across his white dress shirt, looking like a gunshot wound to the chest. Get out, I said. This is my house, he sneered, wiping wine from his chin. You can't kick me out. Actually, I said, glancing at the window where blue lights were already flashing against the rain-slicked glass. I can. The doorbell didn't ring. It was a heavy, authoritative pounding. Adrian froze. What did you do? I called the police 20 minutes ago, I said, walking to the door. I told them my husband was becoming violent and refusing to leave, which, judging by the overturned chair and the screaming, is accurate. I opened the door. 2 officers stood there, rain dripping from their brimmed hats. Behind them, I could see Mrs. Higgins from next door peering through her blinds. Ma'am, the older officer asked, we got a call about a domestic disturbance? Yes, I said, stepping aside. He's in the dining room. I have a temporary restraining order issued this afternoon by Judge Galloway. I handed him the paperwork Renee had messengered over an hour ago. Adrian came storming into the hallway. This is ridiculous. Officer, my wife is hysterical. We're just having an argument. Sir, step outside, please, the officer said, hand resting near his belt. I need my bag, Adrian said, lunging toward the kitchen island where his briefcase sat. The briefcase that contained his laptop and the encrypted hard drive Patricia was dying to get her hands on. Don't let him take it, I said sharply. That briefcase contains evidence of federal wire fraud. My lawyer has already flagged it for the FBI. Adrian looked at me with pure hatred. You bitch! Sir, leave the bag, the officer barked, stepping between Adrian and the counter. Hands where I can see them. Step outside now. They escorted him out. He was still wearing his wine-stained shirt. He looked small, pathetic. He slipped on the wet front steps and had to grab the railing to steady himself. I'll fix this, he screamed back at me from the sidewalk as the neighbors watched. You'll see, Jordan. You're nothing without me. I stood in the doorway, the cool rain misting against my face. Watch me, I whispered. Then I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. The adrenaline crash hit me 10 minutes later. I found myself sitting on the floor of the hallway, hugging my knees, shaking uncontrollably, but I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. I had to tell the kids. I went upstairs. They were in Micah's room playing Legos. They looked up when I entered, their faces innocent and open. Where's Dad? Micah asked. We heard yelling. Yeah, was he fighting the bad guys? Evie asked. I sat down on the floor with them, pushing a pile of plastic bricks aside. I took a deep breath. How do you explain reproductive theft to a first grader? You don't. You keep it simple. You tell the truth, but slanted. Daddy made some big mistakes, I said, my voice trembling. He broke some rules, big rules, and because of that, the police said he can't live here for a while. Micah's face crumbled. Is he going to jail? I don't know, honey. Maybe. But who will coach my soccer team? He wailed. My heart broke. We'll figure it out, but there's something else. Something really important. I pulled Evie onto my lap. You know Lila? From the park? The sparkly ladies girl? Evie asked. Yes, well, it turns out Lila is special. She's your sister. Silence. Micah stopped crying and stared at me. Like, for real? Micah asked. Not just a play sister? For real, I said. Biologically. She has the same daddy as you, and she has the same mommy as you. Me. But she came out of Sparkly Lady's tummy, Evie argued, her logic impeccable. She did, I nodded. It's complicated science, but inside she's made of the same stuff as you guys. She's a Hartley. Micah picked up a Lego dragon. He turned it over in his hands. Does that mean she can come over and play whenever we want? I let out a sob that was half laugh. Kids. Their resilience is the only thing that saves us. Yeah, buddy, I said, kissing the top of his head. I think she's going to be coming over a lot. Saturday came again, but this time I wasn't hiding in the bushes. I invited Veronica over. It was the weirdest invitation I'd ever extended. Hey, mistress who accidentally raised my child, come over for brunch? She arrived at 10:30 a.m. She looked terrified. Lila was holding her hand, clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked suspiciously like the one Evie had lost 2 years ago. I opened the door. Hi, Veronica whispered. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Hi, I said. We stood there for a moment, two women connected by the most bizarre, traumatic tether imaginable. Then Evie ran past me. Lila! She shrieked. Lila's face lit up. Evie! They hugged. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't weird. It was just two little girls who were happy to see each other. Micah hung back, looking cool. Hey, he said, do you like Minecraft? Yeah, Lila said. I built a castle. Cool. Come see mine. The kids ran off to the living room. The adults were left standing in the foyer. Coffee? I offered. Please, Veronica said. Or tequila. I'm not picky. We sat at the kitchen island, the same island where Micah had dropped the bomb a week ago. How much did you know? I asked. I needed to be sure. About the money? Nothing, Veronica said, staring into her mug. He told me he was an early investor in Bitcoin. I swear. I paid the bills he sent me. I didn't know it was embezzled construction funds. And the open marriage? I believed the contract, she said, looking up, her eyes wet. Jordan, I thought you were this cool, progressive woman who was too busy for a second husband. I admired you. I laughed bitterly. I admired you too, in the park. I thought you looked happy. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the kids arguing over whose turn it was on the Xbox. She's yours, Veronica said suddenly. Biologically. Legally, probably. Renee says you could take her. She knows who her mother is, Veronica, I said gently. You wiped her nose. You tucked her in. DNA is a map, but love is the territory. I'm not going to take her away from you. Veronica started crying again. Then what do we do? We figure it out, I said. We make a patchwork quilt out of this mess. Because those 3 kids in the other room, they're siblings. And we're the only 2 people on Earth who understand what a psychopath Adrian Hartley is. It took 6 months for the gavel to fall. The trial was a media circus. The Seaport swindler, the headline screamed. Real estate mogul steals wife's eggs. I sat in the front row of the federal courthouse. Renee was on my right. Veronica was on my left. We were a united front of scorned women, dressed in black like we were attending a funeral for his ego. Adrian looked terrible. The prison jumpsuit was orange and ill-fitting. He had lost weight. He wouldn't look at us. The judge was a woman named Judge Sullivan. She had read the case files. She looked like she wanted to vomit. Mr. Hartley, she said, peering over her glasses, in my 20 years on the bench, I have seen greed. I have seen violence, but I have rarely seen such a calculated, narcissistic violation of human autonomy. Adrian's lawyer tried to speak. Your Honor, my client. Sit down, Judge Sullivan snapped. She turned back to Adrian. You stole millions, but money can be repaid. What you did to these 2 women, that cannot be repaid. You treated human life like inventory. Adrian stared at the table. For the counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison, she said. The gavel banged. Crack. And, she added, I am granting full legal custody of Lila Miller Hartley to Jordan Hartley, with shared guardianship rights to Veronica Miller. You are stripped of all parental rights. You are not to contact these children until they are 18, and only then if they consent. Adrian looked up then. He looked at me. His eyes were empty. Jordan, he mouthed. I didn't blink. I just reached out and took Veronica's hand. Let's go, I said. We have a soccer game to get to. 3 months later, it's Saturday morning again. I'm at Riverside Park, the same bench, the same view of the Charles River. But I'm not hiding in the bushes in a disguise. I'm sitting right out in the open, drinking a latte that I bought myself. Micah is pushing Lila on the swing. Evie is trying to do a cartwheel and failing spectacularly. Higher, Micah! Lila screams, her laughter ringing out across the water. Veronica walks up. She's wearing jeans and a paint-stained t-shirt. She hands me a scone. Blueberry lemon, she says, fresh from the oven. You spoil me, I say, taking a bite. Someone has to. She grins. It's weird. It's messy. People stare. The Hartley scandal is still fresh gossip in Boston. They whisper when they see us. The wife and the mistress, hanging out at the park with the stolen daughter. Let them whisper. Adrian is in a cell in Danbury. He sends letters. We burn them unopened in the fire pit in my backyard while drinking wine. I looked at the kids. Micah, Evie, Lila. They look like a set. A matching set of dark curls and dimples. Lila runs over to us, breathless. Mom, she yells at Veronica. Watch this! She does a perfect backflip. Nice! Veronica cheers. Then Lila turns to me. Mama J, did you see? I saw, baby, I call back. 10 out of 10, Mama J. We're working on the titles. It's a work in progress. I didn't get the justice I thought I wanted. I didn't save my marriage. I didn't fix the crisis in a way that kept my name out of the papers. But looking at those 3 kids, laughing and tangled together in a heap of limbs and joy, I realized something. I didn't lose a husband. I just trimmed the dead weight. And in the process, I gained a sister in Veronica and I got my daughter back. Hey, Veronica bumps my shoulder. You okay? I take a sip of coffee, feeling the sun on my face. Yeah, I say, and for the first time in a year, I actually mean it. I'm good. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.